Hey there, it's Kellie Riordan and this is Curveball. If you're a regular listener to the show, you might have noticed that my nephew Liam has started doing some producing for us. And he recently came to me with quite an interesting question about mentoring. And it prompted quite a good discussion. And so I grabbed our Curveball executive producer, Rachel Fountain, and Liam, and we decided to hit record on this conversation because we think you might also find it quite helpful.
Okay, so Kellie, Mum is telling me all the time that I need to get a mentor. She was telling me that when I was doing film and TV at university, and then now that I'm doing a new job in audio, she's telling me that I need a mentor in audio. And I said to her, I have one because I'm working with you and with Rachel. But is that actually mentoring? Are you my mentor?
Am I your mentor? I feel like it's like that book, Are You My Mother? So I don't know, Rach, I think we're kind of mentors to some of the junior and upcoming producers on Curveball. Would you say we're mentors?
Yeah, I think so because I do sort of think about it that way. There's that line between like feedback and mentoring, but I think about the people who mentored me, and I might not have even realized it because it wasn't like a formalized thing. I didn't go to them and say necessarily, will you be my mentor? And then, some kind of holy ceremony ensued.
Yeah, because I wouldn't really describe me as a mentor for you, Liam. I would say I give you feedback, and feedback's a really valuable thing that I believe in a lot, and we have a really strong feedback culture at Dead Set Studios that makes Curveball, whereby we all want to be better at everything that we do all the time, and the way to do that is to say, hey, how am I going with this, and what am I doing well, and what can I do differently next time, and try to think of solutions. But I think that's different to mentoring, which to me is much bigger picture. If I think about the things when I wanted to have a mentor when I was early on in my career, it's sort of the people that you turn to say, not just how am I going with this individual piece of work that I'm doing, this one documentary or whatever, but to sort of say, how can I grow and learn and develop as an employee and as a person, and how can I get to my next level in my career, or how, if I've got ambition to be, to move up from being a producer to an executive producer, how can I do that? And I think for me, I certainly had a few in my early career. I think about one of the first news editors that I worked with who taught me a lot. But then I also think about the couple of people who've probably mentored me in my mid-career. The advice was so much like almost philosophical. I think a good mentor pushes you to think about what your values are and where you're trying to go from a much deeper level.
So mentoring is kind of the big picture, almost years and years, where feedback is more of a day-to-day, this week we're doing this and this is how you can do it better.
Yeah, I think so. And even I think about coaching is slightly different too. Like coaching is a bit more, I definitely think I've coached a lot of the staff that I've worked for, where you're asking them questions to try and get them to come up with insights of their own. I think, I don't know, Rach, when I worked with you at the ABC, I hope there was some coaching that I did for some of you.
No, none that I can recall actually. Yeah, absolutely. I think, Kel, that you definitely coached people, but I would say that at times I've looked to you as a mentor. Not always. There are some areas in which I'm far more advanced, obviously. But absolutely, and it is kind of like that whole of life philosophy, right? If you're a mentor to me, is somebody who you go to because you want their considered kind of care for you and strategic longer term advice for you. And you might have different mentors in different fields. What I've found is I've had different mentors at different times. And certainly in a career sense, I've had different mentors when I've been in slightly different industries. So when I worked in publishing, my first boss there was really, I look back on him really fondly as a mentor. And certainly as I moved through radio and podcasting, absolutely. Have you heard about that concept of championing as well?
Yeah, I think championing is, I would definitely say I've championed some people, because when you see someone who you're just like, oh, that person's just got something and they're going to grow and be amazing, and you want to put them, I think a good champion deliberately puts those people into opportunities for them to grow and helps them hang around good people and be on good projects and take that opportunity to backfill as the manager of something. And I think, yeah, you're right. Championing is, I think, really powerful.
It's like that thing where, have somebody who will mention your name in a room full of powerful people. It really is important, and people who will take a risk for you. And I feel like I've both worked hard in my career, but I have been really lucky that I've had people who've maybe recognised something in me that they've thought, oh, okay, I think you're ready for this next opportunity. So for me, that's been, I don't know if I've ever had somebody who I've thought of as, who I've gone to formally and said, will you be my mentor? But I've absolutely had champions and coaches, and the day-to-day feedback has kind of flowed into that in some instances.
There have been some people on Curveball who really swear by mentors, and I think about Andrew Stark. He went across to one of the big kind of leadership courses at Harvard, and that sort of put him on a path to find someone like Ben Crow, who he seeks the counsel of, and Ben works with a lot of athletes and a lot of high-flying kind of people. So there's obviously that more formalised, almost professional approach to mentoring.
You just got to have the courage to ask. And I had said to the board, hey, I want to do some development work, and like, you got some ideas, and Matt said, yeah, spend some time with Ben Crow, and it was Ben that sort of really shaped me to say, hey, part of the whole leadership journey and life coaching is actually setting up a support network and a mentor. And I asked him the same question. We're like, all right, well, how do I approach that? And he's like, well, find the types of people that you resonate with and that you respect, and and just ask them. So, hey, can you work with me as a mentor? Can we spend a couple of hours every quarter together and have a coffee? And I've done this with friends or staff and teams of people where I've actually helped them find a mentor, and it's so, you'd be surprised when you actually just ask. People actually feel rewarded by that. The person who's doing the mentoring is like quite chuffed to be asked. Yeah.
And how formalised, some of those relationships that you've developed for your staff members, et cetera, how formalised are they? Is it just a coffee where you're doing something, having a chat, talking through ideas, or is it more tangible where someone's coming in and maybe saying, look, this is how you should run your P&L sheet and various other things?
Look, I think certainly the work I did with Ben Crow, that was structured life planning, leadership coaching, meeting quarterly for half-day sessions, and, there were some outcomes and setting some plans and goals, and, so that was extremely structured. But that was also a paid service at the time and so on. The work I've sort of done with other mentors is not as structured, but it's certainly, there's clarity that it's a mentor role in the I've said to some of these people, it's like, hey, can you help mentor me? And one of them, who's an amazing guy, is Brett Chenoweth, who's the former CEO of APN and is a chairman of multiple companies, and very talented executive, but an incredible character. And he's a great support to me, and he's got such a wealth of knowledge across different industries and businesses, and owns Madman Entertainment and owns Saxton Speakers, and he's got a very good cross section, but he's just a good person too, a good character. And for me, as a CEO, but even in life, to just have someone like that who's a bit older and a bit wiser and has been there, done that.
This is Curveball, and I'm Kellie Riordan. What's the difference between mentoring, coaching, or just seeking feedback? They all look a little different, and you probably seek them out at different times in your career. Kate Morris, who runs Adore Beauty, was a guest on a previous Curveball episode, and she was a skeptic about coaching at first, until her coach asked her to write a letter to herself.
About 10 years in, the growth started to plateau off a bit. And I thought, if this is all it's going to be, then I don't know if I want to keep doing this. And so I went and paid a business coach, and she got me to write a letter to myself from 10 years in the future. And I thought, well, that sounds like a dumb idea, but I may as well do it. And honestly, it was like turning all the lights back on. Suddenly, the whole path was just illuminated for me. And I just went, oh, no, I do know what to do. And I was just completely reinvigorated. And so I thought, right, well, I'm going to need to raise some capital. But I knew that to be able to raise capital, I'd need to be able to show an investor that this could be a fast-growing business.
I was asked to mentor recently for Women in Media, which is an organisation that obviously encourages and tries to support women working in the media, funnily enough. But they said, I thought this was really interesting because I get asked to do mentoring quite a bit at universities and all those things like you do, Rachel. But this was a really interesting process because they said, would you like to be a mentor? Then they gave me this portal that you had to log on to, and there were a whole series of questions that I had to answer, and then sort of an algorithm in the back end. And the mentees have to, input their information as well. And it was both asking questions about the sorts of skills or, the areas where I could impart, I guess, technical wisdom. But then it also talked about the sorts of philosophies that you have on things or the values you have or the sorts of conversations you want to have. Like I'm very interested in supporting, young women, or I might want to support an Indigenous storyteller or those sorts of things. And then the algorithm does like a Tinder and matches you up. So I'm really looking forward to, who I meet in that process. Do you think that will work?
I think we heard it here first. Kellie Riordan is on the apps and swiping right willy-nilly. I do think, though, there is I do think there is something to that, because I think about the times in my life and my career where I just desperately wished that I had somebody that I could go to that, it's like when you're a teenager and you kind of don't necessarily want to talk to your parents, but you need somebody. You might talk to an auntie, or you might talk to somebody else's mum and dad. But, you reach those crux points in your career where you're like, I really need some advice right now. I need somebody who's on my team, but who also is kind of independent and objective. I think about that now, and I think it helps me when I do deal with people who are at an earlier stage in their career, because I see myself there every time. And I can remember exactly what it was like. Do I take that job in a country town so that I can get ahead? What's the value of a sideways step versus a sideways step with a supportive boss versus hanging around and waiting for kind of a step forward. So yeah, I think there's heaps of value in it, and it feels great to kind of mentor people and to coach and to give back in that way.
I really want to mentor at the moment in terms of managing my own business. Because, or any mentor that I've had's kind of been in the media industry. But now what I need is the person who knows how to scale a company and run a business. And I guess because it's such a roller coaster too, you do need someone in your pocket going, it's all right, you'll figure it out and you'll be able to keep going and just keep going and all of those sorts of things. So if someone's out there who wants to mentor me.
You should ask to do both. If you're going to be a mentor for women in media, you should ask to be on the other end as well and get your own mentor.
I should. That's a really good point. And who are we going to work out to be your mentor?
Liam, I guess the thing would be, what do you most need help with? Because do you need somebody who's going to ask you these questions, who's going to say, where do you see yourself? Where do you want to be? What are the challenges? Or what are you thinking?
It's a good question. This is probably the first time in a very long time for me that I haven't thought about it very much, because this is, as soon as I started this job, I could see straight away all of the things that I needed to learn and know that I would learn them as well, because it's my first job in audio. I've done a little bit of editing and things like that, but this is the first job in an actual audio production company. And so I have a lot to learn. And so I know that that's what I'm getting, from this job while I'm doing this. So it's probably not something that I would even be worrying about for the next little while.
Do you think there's something generational about, I wonder, like people your age, Liam, in their mid-20s, do you want mentors? Like, is that something that you all still seek out, or is it something that is a bit 20 years ago?
It's definitely something that I seek out. I actually had the best thing that happened to me at university was that Ted Emery, who directed Kath and Kim, was a guest lecturer for one of our subjects, and we got along really well. And then when I left university, he asked me to keep sending him scripts, and he still reads my scripts now and gives me advice. And that's been a really interesting relationship because he's not a writer, but he's had a really, really long, successful career as a director. And so he's got a very interesting perspective where he's not telling me how to improve my writing from the craft standpoint of a writer, but from somebody who's had a long career of reading other people's scripts and turning them into something else. And so I absolutely think that mentors are really important.
I think also sometimes it's a stage of life mentor that you need. So I can definitely remember when I had children for the first time, and it was the first time I had to navigate being a woman in the workplace and, you know, having small children and the whole juggle that is, and how to negotiate going part-time and all of that rubbish. I definitely at that point was really seeking out the women that were just before me, going, how did you make this work, and what was your experience, and how did you have these conversations? And so I definitely think for that period, that sort of 5 years of my life, I was really trying to cultivate, and I was looking for the sort of the role models or the women that I wanted to be like, which was to have some balance, to work really hard and have a great career, but also, you know, value being a mother, and a good one and a fairly present one. So I think you also have times in your life where you're seeking a certain sort of mentoring that you won't need forever.
Yeah, that life stage thing is really nice. And maybe it's somebody to kind of say to you, is there a little element of it that is kind of psychological and emotional in a really good way? It's somebody to say to you, you're actually doing really well, so take stock and enjoy this time.
That's what every best mentor does. Just reminds you, hang on a minute, you've come a really long way. Look at you. You know, look at all these things you've ticked off. Let's just take a moment to look at that. That's absolutely the best kind of champion or mentor or coach, I think.
I think mentors are really old school in a really good way. Like, I think that as we move into work that is so dominated by technology and, you know, with podcasts that didn't exist a few decades ago, I think we have a bit of a tendency to forget the kind of old school craftsperson approach to work, which is that people who are experts pass down their expertise in a very simple way that works really well. And I think that's something that mentorship seems to do now that our careers are so much more oddly shaped, is that sometimes it's just good to have a person who says, I have done this before, and this is a good way to do it, and you're doing well, and keep going.